Sit down. Dim the lights. Breathe slowly. Listen closely. What I am about to guide you through is small in action, but wide in consequence. A simple way to open a doorway to perception that many traditions call the awakening of the pineal. The subtle center people sometimes call the third eye. If you follow this instruction and stay with it for a week, you may begin to feel a quiet activation at the center of your head, a mild pressure, warmth, or a gentle ringing subjective sensations commonly associated with what some call pineal awakening. I am not making a medical claim. These are experiential reports. If at any point you feel disoriented or distressed, stop and consult a healthcare professional. Briefly, a note about sources. Some early Christian texts discovered at Nag Hammadi, including the Gospel of Mary, preserve an alternative current of teaching in which Jesus speaks to a smaller circle about seeing what ordinary vision misses. These accounts are not the canonical Gospels. They are fragmentary and speak in symbolic language. When I say according to these texts or the Gospel of Mary reports, I am pointing to that lineage of witness, not asserting doctrinal authority. Think of them as a set of instructions from a stream of ancient seekers who believed human sight could be trained. Why does any of this matter? Because most of us walk through life with a visual filter turned on by habit. Our brains economize vision. Central focus gives us crisp detail where we look, while peripheral vision trades clarity for motion and change. That trade-off, in ordinary life, is useful. But according to some early teachings and too many modern contemplatives, it also leaves vast margins of perceptual possibility unvisited. Those margins, the edge of vision, are where subtle phenomena can first be noticed. Slight distortions, shifts in light, shadow figures that do not belong to ordinary objects. The Nag Hammadi texts refer to unseen powers and a constricting creator figure, the demiurge, that limits human perception. In Gnostic language, archons are invisible governance-like entities that influence the emotional tone of a place or the subtle impressions people carry. Whether you read these as literal beings, metaphors for psychological patterns, or a mix of both, the consequence is the same: a field of influence that operates below ordinary attention. Here is a simple framing. The world presents itself to you through filters, biological, cultural, and spiritual. Some of those filters are healthy. Some keep you safe. Some, however, can become habitual blinders. The technique I will teach uses what you already have, your peripheral vision and your nervous system's capacity for relaxed attention, to widen that field. The purpose is not to frighten you with stories of invisible predators. The purpose is to bring what is already happening into the light of awareness so that you are no longer feeding on automatic reactivity. Greater visibility is, in many traditions, the first step toward freedom. Let me explain the mechanism in plain language. Central vision, the part of sight you use to read text or recognize faces, is high resolution and attention hungry. Peripheral vision is lower in resolution but exquisitely sensitive to change in light and motion. When you soften your gaze, you reduce the brain's tendency to lock its attentional spotlight. That permits the peripheral system to register more subtle fluctuations without being immediately labeled as noise and discarded. Over time, with gentle practice, the brain rebalances. The habit of filtering is relaxed long enough for new information, impressions you once dismissed, to become available as conscious experience. Many contemplative traditions, and apparently some early Christian teachers, describe this as a process of letting the eyes rest while the inner seeing becomes more active. Now the practice itself. It is simple and modest. It requires no equipment, no substances, and no years of training. Do this in a quiet room with low, neutral light. The light should be enough to see shapes and the outline of a space, but not so bright that your pupils constrict into a hard focus. Sit comfortably with your spine relaxed. Do not stare. Do not strain. Soften the muscles around your eyes and the jaw. The key is the quality of attention. Relaxed, not distracted. Open, not intensely searching. Close your mouth. Breathe slowly. Soften your gaze toward a blank or neutral field, a wall, an empty corner, a dim window. Let your eyes rest in the general field. Do not aim them at a single point. Keep your head still. Allow your peripheral awareness to hold the edges of the space. If your mind jumps to commentary, is that a shadow? Or that can't be real? Notice the thought and return to the soft attention. 10 minutes is the target for each session. Practice once a day. Commit for 7 consecutive days. Many people report their first unusual impressions within this week. Others require longer patience. To make the steps unmistakably clear, find a quiet place with subdued, neutral light. Sit comfortably with good posture. Relax your eyes and soften the focus. Attend to the periphery rather than locking onto details. Hold that gentle attention for about 10 minutes. Practice daily for 7 days. Do not force images. Do not pursue anything with movement of the eyes. If your attention drifts, gently guide it back. This is not a spectacle to chase. It is an invitation to notice. Try this tonight for 10 minutes. If you notice anything out of the ordinary, a temperature shift, a sensation at the center of your head, or shapes at the edge of your vision, come back and tell us in the comments. Your reports help the community understand the range of experiences people have. What might you expect? Reports vary, but there are recurring themes. Visual phenomena often begin as subtle distortions. A shimmer at the corner of the eye. A translucent ripple that does not cast a shadow like a physical object. A brief flicker that seems to move against the ambient light. Some practitioners describe shadowy figures that hold still at first, like a silhouette paused at the periphery. Many account holders say these forms feel different from ordinary bodies, less dense, more like a condensation or a pattern in the air. Others encounter geometric flashes, small pinpricks of light, or a sense of depth folding strangely where there should be flatness. Parallel to the visual impressions, people often report bodily sensations localized in the head. A subtle pressure between the eyebrows, a warmth at the crown, a gentle pulsing behind the eyes. These are the sensations that tradition has long associated with the pineal or the so-called third eye. When I say pineal awakening, I mean an experiential activation, a felt attention in that central area, not a medical alteration of tissue. Many describe the feeling as a quieting rather than an eruption, a lightness, a tuning, a small center of awareness that seems to listen rather than react. This is why I say, if you feel a mild pressure, a warmth, or a humming, know that others have reported the same, and named it in tradition as the pineal response. How do archons, the entities named in Gnostic writing, fit into this? According to those texts, archons are forces that feed on unconscious resonance, patterns of fear, distraction, and reactivity. Seen through the lens of psychology, they resemble entrenched emotional or social dynamics that leech attention. Seen through a metaphysical lens, they are agents that thrive in unawareness. Practitioners who learn to see describe a common reaction when these presences are made visible. A sudden thinning, a flicker of motion as if something recoiled from the act of being observed. Many report that the sensation of being drained or unusually heavy in a given environment lifts when they become aware of the subtle dynamics at play. Again, I do not promise that this will always happen nor that the change is permanent. I present what practitioners report. Visibility changes the relationship. When you see the edge of a pattern, you no longer feed it unconsciously. If you do perceive something that looks like an entity or an unusual presence, what do? First, do not panic. Second, do not run into confrontation. The ethical posture here is radical restraint and discernment. Seeing more is not an invitation to accuse or to shame. If you feel unsafe, physically remove yourself from the environment. If the experience is disturbing, rest. Ground with simple physical activity, a short walk, a glass of water, contact with another human who is calm, and seek support. Avoid naming or labeling strangers in public discourse. Do not attempt to expose people online because you believe you see their hidden state. The responsibility of visibility is stewardship, compassion without recklessness. There is also a social consequence to learning to see. When perception widens, many people find that they begin to perceive manipulative patterns in media, in social interactions, in workplace dynamics. that can feel disorienting at first. You might notice how certain images or sounds trigger a tightness in you, or how specific people seem to extract attention in subtle ways. Use this awareness as intelligence, not as a weapon. The practice is intended to return agency to you so that you choose how to respond rather than being pushed by invisible currents. A word on safety and limits. Do not use this practice as a substitute for professional care. If you have a diagnosed psychotic disorder, severe dissociation, or a history of intense perceptual distress, consult a mental health professional before experimenting. If you experience persistent anxiety, hallucinations that do not subside, or a destabilizing shift in mood, stop the practice and seek help. Do not augment this technique with substances, prolonged isolation, or extreme sensory deprivation. Gentle, regular practice is the recommended path. You will also meet, in these accounts, the figure called the demiurge. In Gnostic language, the demiurge is the architect who sets boundaries for ordinary perception, not necessarily an evil caricature, but a limiting function, a force that organizes light into the predictable world. Viewing this through tradition helps reframe disorientation rather than being invaded by malevolence. You are learning to inhabit a wider band of perception that the ordinary mind often excludes. The Gnostic texts suggest that Jesus, in certain sayings preserved in the Gospel of Mary, taught a small group methods for moving beyond those limits. Whether you treat those accounts as literal history or as symbolic instruction, the practice itself can be tested quietly and practically. Let me tell you a short, grounded example. A friend of mine, a quiet, unremarkable person who had never been drawn to mystical language, began the soft gaze practice after a stressful season at work. After 3 days of 10-minute sessions, she reported a strange pressure at the center of her head and an odd sensation that the air near her kitchen table had thinned, as if she could see the shape of tension as a darker tint. She did not panic. She put on music, walked outside, and observed the sensation with curiosity. Over the next week, she noticed that the weight she used to carry coming home from the office reduced. She started setting clearer boundaries around her time. Whether the causal pathway was metaphysical or psychological, the result was a greater sense of agency. That is the practical promise. Increased visibility tends to produce clearer choices. Many who practice also describe the reaction of archons, as the Gnostics called them. These reactions are reported not as dramatic horror shows but as subtle shifts, a hitch in the air, a rapid fading, a movement that suggests an intelligence annoyed at being noticed. Often the presence will not vanish altogether. It may reposition or thicken. Visibility does not guarantee eradication. It does, however, alter the relationship between you and that influence. As you become an observer rather than an unwitting feeder, your energy is no longer unconsciously invested. Some would wonder, is this a spiritual bypass, a way to avoid inner work by chasing phenomena? That is a fair concern. True maturation melds insight with moral responsibility. Sane must be accompanied by humility. If visibility reveals a pattern in another person that hurts you, respond by protecting yourself and practicing compassion where appropriate, not by public shaming. Remember that many dynamics labeled as archonic in the Gnostic sense can also be mapped to unresolved trauma, social conditioning, or emotional need. The practice of soft gaze should serve your spiritual maturity, not your vanity. Let us return to practicalities. Slight things make a big difference. Neutral lighting is not candlelit moodiness or bright clinical. Think of a late afternoon room with curtains half drawn, a shaded lamp, or a dim wall where colors are muted. Keep the light even. Avoid high contrast. Sit at a comfortable distance from the surface you are gazing into. Do not close your eyes. The eyes should be open, relaxed, peripheral active. If you begin to feel sleepy, shift position or stop. Drowsiness is not insight. If strong emotions surge up, name them silently and breathe. These are signs that interior material is surfacing. Treat it with care. This practice is not about creating paranoia. It is about cultivating a steady, compassionate attention that notices what was previously overlooked. Over time, practitioners report not only visual impressions but an inner clarity. Decisions that used to be fogged become crisp. Patterns of reactivity reveal themselves. The felt sense of being energetically drained diminishes as you reclaim your attention. Many experience what they call a softening, a less reactive nervous system that can hold more without being hijacked by fear. Historically, this is not entirely foreign to Christian contemplative practice. The Desert Fathers and later mystics spoke of inner seeing, of attention trained to rest in the heart rather than wander. The Gnostic texts add a distinct vocabulary, archons, demiurge, secret teachings, that frames the problem as one of visibility. Whether you resonate with the Gnostic framing or prefer psychological language, the practice of soft, peripheral seeing is a shared method. Cultivate presence at the edge of perception, and the world will offer you more. Before we close, one more caution. Do not make claims that this practice guarantees spiritual protection, medical healing, or supernatural triumphs. Some early traditions valued secrecy and care, others were doctrinally skeptical. The safest posture is curiosity combined with prudence. Use the practice to increase your discernment, not to justify accusation or moral superiority. If you decide to try this tonight, do so gently. 10 minutes, low light, soft gaze. Return and tell us what you noticed. If you felt any activation in the center of your head, warmth, pressure, a humming type, visible in the comments, or simply, right, I felt it. That one piece of feedback will help others understand the range of normal experiences. Finally, an encouragement. Seeing is never merely about spectacle. It is about liberation. When the edge of vision becomes part of your instrument of knowing, you begin to look with more wisdom. The Gnostic voices remind us that knowledge without love is incomplete, and love without clear sight can be easily manipulated. Let your growing sight be joined to compassion. Let your curiosity be steadied by restraint. Let the small activation you feel, however you name it, pineal or otherwise, be a signal to care for yourself and your neighbors with clear intention. May your eyes rest and your heart steady. May the center of your mind awaken to a kinder attention. If you felt any activation, write visible below and share this with someone you trust. Subscribe if you want more practical practices for gentle awakening. Be careful, be compassionate, and guard your peace.